This is Chris Smith, and you're tuned in to Let's Talk About It with my exclusive interview with none other than Mr. Alex Sanz, veteran journalist and senior news leader at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Hollywood Code. Go.
Welcome back.
Hey, Hollywood Code.
Welcome back to News and Talk 1380 WAOK. It is your main man, Chris Smith, and I'm coming to you live from the WAOK motherland. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I know you are used to having me behind the boards as the executive producer, but today I am sitting in the hosting chair, and of course, I have to keep making sure I let you all know we have one of the most historical elections taking place in just 2 days. Voting. Make sure that you exercise your right to vote. 2 days, ladies and gentlemen, this Tuesday, please, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., polls will be open. You want to make sure that you go out there and exercise your right to vote. Now, if you've been tuning into the program, I told you in the 2 o'clock hour, I will have an expertise poster joining the program to talk about some numbers. We have been hearing a lot. We just got that breaking news about the Iowa polls, but we want to see how Georgia is looking. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give a warm welcome for none other than the Deputy Managing Editor and Politics Director that is overseeing a major expansion of his politics franchise, providing overall leadership to the politics team and the editorial strategy for the state and national political coverage, veteran journalist and senior news leader at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Mr. Alex Sanz. Great afternoon, sir. How are you doing this afternoon?
Good afternoon, Chris. So good to see you.
Yes, sir. Very good as well. And I know you're busy, so we're going to go right to it. Now, Mr. Sanz, we just got 2 days to this actual election that's taking place. There's a lot of worrisome. There's a lot of numbers that's going around. Is there any indicator of how Georgia is looking, or is it still a toss-up?
I wish I could say we had more clarity today than we had maybe earlier this year when we thought the race would be a race between President Biden and former President Trump. But the truth is, 2 days out, this is a very close race, and it's shaping up to be as tight as it was in 2020. We're seeing this in polls of Georgia. The AJC's poll, in fact, found that former President Trump appears to have a slight lead, but that's inside the margin of error. And this means that on Tuesday, this race could break either way. One poll I'll highlight, though, out this morning, the New York Times Siena College poll of likely voters in Georgia. It shows about 87% of black voters in Georgia and about 31% of white voters in Georgia are supporting Vice President Harris. That's in line more or less where Democrats want to see their support in these closing days of the election. If you think back to our earlier AJC poll at the beginning of October, that's an improvement. Vice President Harris had support, but not as much support as President Biden did. So there appears to be some narrowing, some closing of the gap, and that's something the campaign sees as encouraging. One thing we are watching, though, beyond the polls, is the early vote. As you know, we had a record turnout in Georgia, more than 4 million people voting early, setting records almost every single day. We don't know the results yet. We have to wait till election night for that. But this much we know. There was heavy turnout in Metro Atlanta. More women than men voted early, and so did people over the age of 50. And their top issues, we've heard this throughout the year, the economy, inflation, the cost of living, and preserving democracy.
Wow. Very interesting, people. And I know there's a lot of worry in the air. So for those who may be leaning on one side or leaning on the other, it's really important that you go out there and exercise your vote. Tuesday, I cannot stress that enough, ladies and gentlemen. Tuesday, make sure you get out there. In that case, if Georgia ends up swinging blue for Ms. Harris or red for Donald Trump, how might that influence the overall election outcome? I know we've been hearing a lot this week. Georgia is the road to the White House. How much is that reflecting in truth based off of the numbers that you've been seeing?
Georgia really is part of the road to the White House, but I think the consensus is there are 6 or 7 states that potentially could be part of this road to Washington. Georgia, of course, is a very important one. This is a state that in 2020 helped deliver the White House and the Senate to President Biden, just under 12,000 votes. But on election night, keep an eye on these states. We'll watch Georgia, but also watch North Carolina. Keep an eye on the so-called blue wall states. That's Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and then out west, Arizona and Nevada. Harris and Trump are close in all of these states. And just as in Georgia, there is a sense that each of these states, 2 days out, is a coin toss and could be decisive. If there's one word we should keep in mind, though, heading into Tuesday and really throughout the week, it's patience. There's a chance we might not know who won the election on Tuesday. Even if we think we have a clearer picture of Georgia Tuesday night, not every state counts as fast as Georgia plans to. Georgia this year certainly plans to count the majority of its votes by 8 o'clock. That's a change from previous years where, you remember 2020, we had to wait hours and hours to get a really good picture of where the state was going. If it takes a couple of days, that does not necessarily mean there's a problem. It just means that the votes are still being counted, and we have to wait till everyone is counted to find out who wins the election on Tuesday.
Interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard that loud and clear, straight from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's expert within polling. That is great information. Mr. Alex, I appreciate you for your time. I want to make sure that we're going to get you right in and out. Last question, for those who, of course, are still just having some things, is there anything you could say to those undecided people who still haven't voted in order to express your importance of voting? Like, is there anything you could say to those that still may be on a haywire but not realizing that they have a lot of power this Tuesday coming up?
I would use your words, and that's get out and vote. Whoever you vote for, whoever you decide will do a better job as president, your voice matters when you walk into the polling place and cast your vote. We often hear about, after the fact, I wish I could have done this or I wish I could have done that. We seem to have people who are now realizing that every vote in a state as close as Georgia matters. And when it's all said and done, think about how close this race is here. Mm-hmm. We are looking at the undecided number of voters anywhere from 8% to 10%. That's a really small fraction of voters who tell us are persuadable. So those individual votes, when taken together, could tip this election one way or the other. That only happens when you walk into that polling location and cast your vote on Tuesday.
Amazing. Mr. Alex Sanz, we thank you so much for your time. We'll be talking soon.
Talk soon. Thanks so much.
Yes, sir.